first up is a useful new resource connected to the PS4 SUID scanner project, and this document attempts to record and organize security vulnerabilities affecting PS4 versions 13.0 all the way up to 13.52. Now, what I like about this page is that it does not simply dump a list of CVE numbers. It separates the ideas from the ones that have already been discarded, and it identifies the areas that still needs more investigation. So for example, we can see that CVE 2026-7270 is marked as disregarded, while CVE 2026-49415 remains a candidate. The Siltius or FFS_mail, the path is listed as confirmed vulnerable, and the PS4 parser is still being investigated. This gives us a single place to see what has already been checked and where additional work may be helpful. It is security research rather than a finished jailbreak chain, but organizing the information is still valuable because it can prevent duplicated effort and make future research easier to follow. Next up is a detailed write-up from Alex Free explaining PS5 Disc Drive Pairing. Now, this topic can be confusing because the answer changes depending on which PS5 model that you own, the firmware installed on it, and whether the drive was paired at the factory. So own an original FAT PS5 with a factory installed disk drive, the drive remains usable after the command reset and reinstalled operations shown in this table. The detachable drive situation is different. A slim console on firmware 7.x does not begin with the drive paired, while a slim on firmware 8.0 or newer can have it paired out of the box. Reinstalling the operating system can also produce a different result than resetting settings or restoring a backup. Now, the article walks through each combination and explains why a simple yes/no answer is not enough. If this subject affects your console, the full table is worth reading. Now we move into new PS5 Homebrew Applications. So PVHP is a native PV head client for jailbroken PS5 consoles. It brings live calibration directly to the PS5 with channel switching, now in next program information, a full program guide, and one-button recording scheduling. You can also browse existing DVR recordings, play them, cancel scheduled recordings, or delete them. Multiple TV head-end servers can be saved, which is useful if you have more than one server or tuner set up. The streams are decoded with FFmpeg and delivered through HTSP. There is also another media project worth watching from John Tormalum called JT Play, and JT Play is an audio and video player for jailbroken PS5s. It can browse local media in UPnP or DLNA servers, and developers can add more media providers through the Lua plugins. TVHP is focused on live television and DVR use, while JT Play is shaping up more as a general media player. Together, they show that media-focused PS5 Homebrew is starting to become a real category. Shadow Mount Plus Fan is a fork of Shadow Mount Plus, and it adds persistent fan temperature control. So the target temperature is configured through Shadow Mount configuration file. The default is 75 degrees Celsius, and accepted values range from 60 to 85 degrees. All is to keep the selected fan behavior active while games launch and while the console changes state. The developers report testing on firmware 7.6 with community results extending through 10.01. This is a practical addition for users who already rely on Shadow Mount Plus and want fan control integration into the same workflow instead of launching a separate utility. Next up, we can see that Lightning Mods has released the source code for the PS4 Online Homebrew Store installer. The repository includes the installer source and its build workflow. The project is designed to simplify installing the Homebrew Store on a PS4, and publishing the source gives other developers a chance to inspect the implementation, build it themselves, and contribute improvements. There is not a formal packaged GitHub released at the moment, so the story here is specifically the release of the source code for a project that many PS4 Homebrew users already recognize. Having the installer's code publicly available is a welcome development. Next up, we have PS5 mount dumper, which has reached version 1.11 beta, and the headline edition is reported support through PS5 firmware 13.60. The payload dumps PS5 application files from PFS mount to connected USB storage. This update also fixes missing Plago files in dumped applications, which should make resulting dumps more complete. The workflow is still USB-based rather than a network transfer, so you send the payload through the ELF loader, select the mounted application, and then write the files to an attached USB drive. For users working with their installed PS5 application, the expanded firmware support is the important change in the release. Now, there are also some new developments from two experimental PS5 emulator projects. Kata PS5 continues to publish frequent automated builds. The recent work includes memory tracking, shader changes, processor instruction support, and additional Mac OS work. These builds move very quickly, so the release list is the best place to follow the current state of the project. Also, we saw with Sharp EMU's latest package release remains version 0.0.3 hotfix 2, but development has continued beyond that package. Recent source commits include more Astrobot Vulkan work, AGC fixes, and GUI stability improvements. Both projects remain early, but it is interesting to see the two different teams working actively through the huge technical challenges involved in PS5 emulation. Next up, we have SaveSyncPSPC, which is a PC side bridge remove and supported game saves between a local PC and Garlic Save Manager on a PlayStation 5. So the tool discovers supported saves through Garlic, groups the files that belong together, runs the appropriate game-specific conversion, and can write the converted data back through Garlic. It can work in both directions for supported totals from PS5 to PC and from PC back to PS5. The July 25th update highlights progress with Baldur's Gate 3 save conversion. The developer is also working towards a more general structure for Unreal Engine games, where new titles can be described through game metadata instead of requiring a completely separate program. Compatibility is still game-specific, but this just project cross-platform save movement is something players ask about constantly, and Garlic Save Manager gives this project a useful foundation, at least on the PlayStation 5 side. Except we have Cheat Runner coming in at version 0.17, which brings several practical improvements to the PS5 cheat trainer. So the release fixes an issue where the trainer menu, setting page, and support window could report they loaded without actually appearing on some firmware, including a report from 4.03. The calls was a CSS feature that was not enabled in that version of the PS5 WebKit browser, so the interface has been changed to use positioning that works on those systems. There is also a configurable controller hotkey. The default combination is L2 plus R3, and when the game is running, the hotkey can open directly to the game's trainer instead of starting on the main dashboard. Version 0.17 also improves scrolling and image loading in the PS5 browser. A hotkey remains operational on firmware where it has not been fully confirmed, but the rest of the release is focused on making Cheat Runner faster and more reliable across a wider range of consoles. Except one of the more interesting developer-focused release of this week is Sharp Prospero version 0.5. So Sharp Prospero is a C# SDK and toolchain for building native PS5 applications. Version 0.5 is in its first release, capable of producing valid bootable PS5 Homebrew. The toolchain compiles C# ahead of time into a self-contained eboot.bin, so there's no separate runtime that has to be installed alongside the application. It includes its own linker and packaging tools, along with bindings and libraries for graphics, controller input, audio, networking, files, storage, system services, and much more. There are 19 .NET new templates covering applications, games, user interfaces, file managers, media players, servers, a load. Other starting point. Now, development on this requires the .NET 10 SDK and Windows Windows users can run the Linux compilation steps automatically through Windows Subsystem for Linux. Now, the current console workflow still uses kstuff and dump installer. The key takeaway is that developers now have a serious C# starting point for native PS5 Homebrew. And now let's go ahead and take a look at the new PlayStation games for jailbroken users. The latest listings include Formula Retro Racing World Tour Special Edition, Jets and Gun 2, Tomb Raider 4-6 Remastered, One Last Breath, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and then over on the PS4 side, the list includes Octopath Traveler 0, which just dropped, and then a couple of other games which I have talked about here in past. And as usual, I have included the covers on the screen so you can pause the video and take a closer look at anything that catches your eyes. Okay, so that is going to do it for this episode of PlayStation Homebrew News. We covered security research, hardware pairing, television and media apps, and much, much more. My question for you is this: which of these projects would you actually use the BPVHE, JT Play, PS5 Out Dumper, or one of the other emulator projects? Let me know in the comments. So if you enjoyed this episode, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more PlayStation Homebrew news. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Michael, out.